Hey guys, welcome to Module 4 of the 7-Day Startup course. This is going to be a really fun one because this is the day when we create our website. Now, this can go a whole bunch of different ways. There's a lot of different technologies you can use to set up a website. I choose WordPress because once you understand how to use it, it's quick to set up, but it's also extremely scalable. There are definitely options that are quicker to set up than WordPress, probably something like Squarespace. Or there's a lot of like LaunchRock, launch pages, stuff like that are probably quicker to set up, but then they're nowhere near as scalable because you can't really customize them. So I always think that going for something that you can ultimately will be the website you end up using is probably a better idea. I mean, there's an argument for just launching something quickly, but I think because WordPress is pretty easy to launch quickly, you can definitely do this in one day. During this module here, I'm going to do it in about half an hour to give you a rough idea of how you can do it. And so I think if you can do it that quickly and build it on a platform that can last you till when you're a multi-million-dollar company, then it makes sense to do that. It's not going to cost you much at all, if not anything. So that's why I choose WordPress. Obviously, I've got a WordPress business, so I'm a little biased there, but then I chose to start a WordPress business because I believed in the platform. So now let's get stuck in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually set up a website, but I'm going to do it on a test domain to give you an idea of how to do it and just talk you through what I'm thinking when I set up a website. So build a website in one day for under $100. This depends on a few variables, but generally hosting's pretty cheap, domains are very cheap. If you can get a cheap theme, that's really all it's going to cost you. So the feeling of this module is this quote from George Patton, which is, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week." So you're not going to build the perfect website in one day, but if you can build a website with a button on it that tells people to pay you, then that's much better than waiting a couple of months to have the perfect website. And you can always improve your site. So get something up, get it launched, and do it as best you can. Of course, execute as well as you can, but just know that you can change it later on, you can improve it later on. So this is the process that I'm going to go through. So first of all, you're going to need a domain name, and this is going to come from your business name. Ideally, you'll get the .com, but plenty of good businesses started without the .com, so it's not the end of the world if you can't get that. I'll talk you through the domain name and redirecting that domain through to your web host, which is the next part. If you want a website on your own domain and you want to use WordPress, then you really need to have your own hosting. Hosting is very cheap, and I'm going to show you how all that works today. WordPress is the platform I choose to use. It's free to download, so it's going to be very easy for us to set that up very quickly in this module. You're going to have to choose a theme to make it look nice, and the theme I've chosen is Fruitful. I honestly just Googled minimalist WordPress themes and looked through a couple of them. This is a really quick, free one that I could use. There's a lot of really good ones that are paid that are like $50. I would recommend going down that path. Elegant themes are good. There's a whole bunch of different providers that are good, but for the purpose of this demo, this is a nice looking theme that I'll use. It's not going to cost me anything. And the fifth part is your funnel, which is what's going to actually happen when people get to your website. Are they going to sign up with an email, or are they going to click a button to buy something? I think for the 7-day startup, because it's so fast, I think you really just need a buy now button. But if you're super game and you really want to set up a website with an email opt-in form on day one, then you can do that and then swap it out on day 7 for a buy now button. But for the purpose of this, we'll just talk about putting a buy now button on the site. All right, so I'm going to jump over to Chrome now and show you how it's done. Over in Chrome now, I'm in the domains section. You can just mouse over your account up the top and click on domains. I'm assuming you've already registered the domain. If you haven't, you can do that with GoDaddy.com or Namecheap.com, someone like that. You can even sometimes do it with your hosting provider, which will save you one step. In this case, I'm registering a domain with GoDaddy. I'm hosting with a company called Wiredtree, so I have an extra step where I need to point the domain to the host. But if your host and the domain registrar are one and the same, then you can skip that step generally. So the procedures you use for doing this are going to be different for every host and every domain register, but generally the support you get is quite good. So if this stuff is not quite exactly how it looks when you do it, or the language is confusing you, I just find it's really easy to go to the host and just plead ignorance and say, look, I've no idea what I'm doing. Can you please do this for me? Most of the time they know how to do it. I wouldn't feel bad about it. These hosting companies know how to make money, and believe me, they will get their money's worth out of you. So you need to go into the domains area. First thing you need to do is point the domain to the host if you're not hosting with the registrar. So I've got a domain here, 7daystartup.co, and you can click on Set Name Servers. And I'm hosting it with a company called Wiredtree. So what I want to do is add the WiredTree name servers in here. And what normally happens is that'll take between 1 and about 24 hours to propagate across, so that when someone goes to 7daystartup.co, whatever is on the WiredTree server is going to show up. I did this a couple of days ago, luckily, so I don't have to do it now. Here's one I prepared earlier. Good lesson too, if you're planning on doing this, do this a couple of days, like do it on the day 4 or earlier, because if you do it on the day you want to launch, you'll be sitting around waiting for your domain to propagate. So I've done it here, which means I can go to WiredTree and set up the domain there, and I should be good to go. Now, again, the technology is going to be different all the time. I'm over at WiredTree here, and WiredTree use cPanel. And I mean, cPanel, it's not the world's best software, but it makes it really easy to do this stuff. So I'm an advocate of cPanel. I think it's really good. It's never going to be the fastest, most amazing, bulletproof system to use to host your website, but for this purpose, it works really well. I'm going to download WordPress as well. So some of your hosts are going to have like a fast install for WordPress. If they don't have it, you can just download it. It's really easy, and you can upload it to your site. I'll do it the long way just to show you how to do it, because it's still super easy to do. So what I've done here, this would be as if I was working on 7daystartup.co. I'm actually not going to do that because I do have a real website at 7daystartup.co and I don't want to change it. But what I'll do is I've just set up a subdomain, test.7daystartup.co, and we'll just use that for the purpose of this module. So what I'll do here is I'll go into the file manager. So the first thing is you have to upload WordPress, and then you need to configure it. So the upload is quite easy. You just get a copy of it and upload it in the file manager. And as I mentioned, I'm going to put it in this test folder. So we'll go upload there. We'll choose the WordPress installation. And that's not going to take too long to upload, even with my fairly average Australian internet speed, although I am uploading a bunch of other stuff at the moment, so it might take a little while. But while we do that, I'll show you the next step, which is to set up the database. So there's 2 components you need for a website, a modern website like WordPress. You need the files and you need the database. So what you want to do here is go in the wizard, the MySQL database wizard, and we can create one. So we'll call this test WP for test WordPress. That's the name of the database. And keep a note of all these details because you'll need them. Test WP user. I'll just do a test user because that will fit. Oh, that won't even fit. So I'll go WP user. Password, I'll go password generator and copy that. I'm just going to throw that in a text file just for the purposes of this so I don't forget it. So I'll throw it in there just so I don't forget it for later. But obviously be smart with your passwords if it's a real one that you're going to use. So we've created the user there. You then have to give it privileges. I like this wizard because it just makes everything simple. I give it all privileges, and then that is then set up. And this is the information you need when you install WordPress. So what I'll do is I'll see where this file is up to. All right, that's about halfway there. So I'm just going to pause the recording and come back when that file's done. All right, so that's just about done now. I think it's at about 99% or 100%. There you go. It's just complete now. So that's done. I'm going to get rid of this file. And what I'll do now is just go to the file manager. So I'll close that, go to the file manager and refresh that. And I'll just unzip it. And then I should be able to check it out on the site. So I'll go extract. Just take a couple of seconds. It's a pretty small bunch of files. And I normally just delete that WordPress install file as well. In this case, I don't want it to be in the WordPress folder, so I'll move the files back. I'll do that by navigating to test in here. This is just like Windows Explorer or the Finder on the Mac. It's all pretty standard stuff. So I'll select all of those, drag those back so it's all just in the test folder. And in your case, you might just do it live on your domain. I'm just doing it in this test folder because it's just for the purposes of this module, and then we'll get rid of it. All right, so I'll get rid of that WordPress file. Now we should be good to go. So the domain, if I go to test.7daystartup.co. With a bit of luck, it'll load WordPress and I'll have to configure it. Let's see what happens. There we go. Very good. So this is the WordPress configuration. It's all pretty basic. You just have to put in the details that you did before with the database. You have to remember what they were. I think it was daystart WP test. I probably should have written these down. If it was a real one, obviously I would have. Daystart, I think it was WP user, wasn't it? Normally localhost for this. That's okay for the data table prefix. You can change that if you want it to be I think it's for the purpose of this. Just leave it. I don't want to complicate things. Let's just do this. Make sure I got it right. So this is what happens if you get an error. Good idea. Now, what I normally do. So username daystart WP user. I've done something wrong. Oh, actually, let me make sure that password's right. Let me see if that works. No, I've done something wrong. So what I'm going to do, go back to cPanel and go MySQL databases and just check the database name and the user that I put in. So we've got current database daystart underscore test WP. This always works a lot better if you copy and paste. So we'll do that. Database name, not the one I put in. So that's where I've gone wrong there. And username, WP user it is there, so we'll, I'll just write in. I think that's what I had anyway. WP user, and then we've got the password there, and then we'll submit that, and it's going to work this time. All right, so that's good. Now you run it, just the basic install. Put in the name. That's the admin user. I'll just call it Dan. I'll use this password for the sake of this experiment, but pick a secure password that's not the same one. Put my email in there, and then allow search engines to index the site. If you want search engines to index it, which you ultimately do, then leave that on. If you uncheck that, you've really got to remember to check it again when you want search engines to index the site. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to do it because in this case it's just a demo site. I'm going to delete this as soon as I stop recording this, by the way. But there you go. So we have set up WordPress. If I go to test.7daystartup.co, that will load WordPress. And there we go. This is WordPress installed with the basic 2015 theme. Now I'm going to log in. Now what I'm going to do, so I haven't talked too much about themes, but there's so many options available. I think this is going to become a big thread in the community where we're constantly on top of the best themes available to use for these 7-day startups. I'm just going to choose a free one right now just because it's easy. I'm going to show you how it's set up. I found this one called Fruitful, which is nice. It's mobile responsive. It's reasonably pretty. It might not be the sort of one you want to launch an actual company with unless you can customize it a little bit, but it looks nice enough for this. So I'm going to use that. So what we'll do is go Appearance Themes. I'll go Add New. And there's loads in the WordPress repository as well. I don't think that particular one is, so I'm going to upload it. Right, Fruitful 2.6, that's the theme. And I'll install that. So if you wanted to do the same thing, you could just go there and download this free theme, but there are so many different themes you use. You might not use this one. Elegant Themes have some good ones. Woo Themes have some good ones. There's Theme Forest. There's a whole bunch of places that have really good WordPress themes. So that's going to take a little bit to upload. I normally run like a standard set of plugins as well when I use WordPress. So I'll use Yoast SEO as an important one. I'll normally set up Google Analytics because you want to get some data on how people are using your site. If you've got a blog and comments, I usually use the Discuss blog comments plugin. It's a really nice one for high quality comments on your site. The Backup Buddy is a really simple plugin for doing backups. If you've got cPanel, you can do it in there, but I like to be able to do it in WordPress. just so you get in the habit of when you're making changes to make sure you back it up before you do so. And I would also delete any plugins that are in there that you don't need, because you don't want those plugins to get out of control, because it's going to take up space and slow your site down. So delete any plugins you don't need. Install Yoast SEO. Yoast Google Analytics is an easy one to install if you're setting up analytics. There's some other way. It really depends on what you're doing with your site. If you want to set up a buy now button, there's a Stripe plugin called I think Stripe Checkout Pro, I think it's called. I'm not 100% sure. I'll check that on my other site. But there's a Stripe one. You can get plugins for setting up simple PayPal buttons, simple forms. It really depends on what you're going to do with your site. In our case, just for this demo, I'm not going to add too many plugins. I might add Yoast just to show you how that works. But I'll just set up a basic WordPress and just show you a couple of things. So that's installed now. Go back to the front end, you'll notice that the site will completely change. Normally when you install a theme, it won't look exactly like the one on the site, because the content isn't there on your page yet. So this is showing latest blog posts. If you go to a page, this might look a little bit more like the theme. See, this looks a little bit more like how the theme looks. So a couple of things I would normally do, if you go to settings, settings general, this particular theme is picking up the description of your site. So you can change that. And that will show there. The other thing I normally do is for a business site, you don't normally want a blog to be on the homepage, and that's what WordPress defaults to. So that's a really easy thing to fix if you go to settings reading. And you just change the front page to one of the pages. There'll be a sample one you can use to start with, and then you can edit that. And that's the setting there, that discourage search engine. So you've got to keep that one in mind if you've done that. So if you go to the home page now, you'll see this is now a proper page with a widget, and you can then work with this. Often the easiest way to do that is click Edit Page at the front end, and you can then go in here, change the template, and change the content and do whatever you want with that page. You probably wouldn't call it sample page. You'd change the name of it. You might change the URL. So this had a slider feature. I don't generally use sliders, but some of the themes you get will have different features you can use. You might want to play around with some of those. Most of them will have a settings area with a whole bunch of settings. So if we go theme options, you'll see this theme. You can upload logos, and if you have a little icon that shows up, the fav icon, you can put links to your social media profiles. This is all reasonably standard stuff that you'll find in themes. Depending on how much time you have and how far you want to take it, you can do all of that. You can change the footer. I'd recommend doing that. It's an easy thing to do. Put your own footer in there so it looks like you haven't just copied someone else's theme. The important thing you have to do is set up a couple of pages, unless you're only going to have one page. But again, really easy. It's a two-step process. You create the pages first, and then you set the menu up. So this could be... So you might have a contact page. I just misspelt that, but I think you get what I'm saying. So you can change the URL of the page by doing that. You might just have a home page, a contact page, a services page, or an about page, or whatever. For a 7-day startup, you're not going to have a huge website. You might set up a blog and start doing a bit of content on your site, which is cool. Go to Appearance Menus, and you only have to do this once, depending on how your menu system works. Sometimes it will automatically pick up all pages by default. So if you look at this might actually have done that. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at that menu. Yeah, so it's actually added that in automatically. So if you had 3 or 4 pages, you could just get away with that. Add 3 or 4 pages in there. You got the menu in there, and that's all good for you. If you want to customize that, you can easily just create one, call it top menu, create the menu, and then you can apply that to the position in the theme. So the location, every theme will have a menu location. In this case, there's just one there. So that will now automatically use the menu that I've created in here. So I can put whatever I want in there now. It's not just going to pick up the pages. I can link to another site. I'm going to delete that sample page because I don't need that. I'm going to call that one home. And it's going to be the same, but I could link to other pages. I could, maybe I'll create 5 or 6 pages. I don't want them all to be in the menu. I can manage that menu through there. So that's probably about it. I mean, in terms of the plugins, you can look in the plugin repository. If you go to plugins, add new over here, this is just an absolute goldmine of amazing stuff that you can get, mostly either for free or really cheap. I'll just double check the name of that Stripe one that I'm using on the 7-day startup site. So this, Simple Checkout. I think the one Simple Checkout Pro is the one I'm using because I have subscriptions. But that's a Stripe one. I mean, literally anything you think of, you can find a plugin for it in WordPress. It's incredible. So if there's something, if you've got a little bit of time before you launch and you want to add in something nice, if you can think of something, maybe you're selling a digital product, there's a plugin called Easy Digital Downloads you can use for that. There's a Stripe plugin for subscriptions. You name it, the plugins exist for it, and generally they're very cheap. I think Easy Digital Downloads is like $50, $100. Stripe one was $50 for the Pro version, but just to add a Stripe button was free. Like the free version does that for you. Things like pricing tables are really cool. Like if you want to fiddle around with those yourself, it's going to take you hours, but there's plugins that do them automatically. So that kind of stuff's really good to use. The only other thing really with WordPress is just to make sure these updates are under control. So what I normally do is if I see any numbers over here, I just get in the habit of going and doing a backup and then updating these plugins. So I'd click that. I'd go update plugins. In this case, Akismet is a spam plugin. Whether you want to use that or not is up to you. So if you're not going to use it, you would just remove that plugin. And you can just do that back at the plugins page. If you've got comments on your site, you might want to use it. This is a demo plugin that comes with WordPress just to give you an idea of how it works. So you can go ahead and delete that one. They're the main features of WordPress. Like this can be built into such a powerful platform. If you're going to be doing content, you'll do it through the posts area. And that's how you create blog posts. If I go in here, I would normally add a blog page in the menu. So sometimes you can add a page and it'll default to blog. But if you've got posts in here, I would add a page just for the blog. So a really easy way to do that. I'll just show you quickly how to do that. I'll just call this one blog. So this is going to be the page that I use to have all of my blog posts on it by default, and that'll be now /blog. And then I'll go into settings reading. Just like I changed the home page before, you can change the default page that lists your blog posts. So we'll go there, we'll call that blog. Save that, and now when we go here, we've only got one blog post, but it's gonna list all the posts there. So that's a bit of a rough tour of WordPress. I mean, we've set this site up. You're probably going to want to make it look a lot nicer than we have on the homepage. You can do a lot of that stuff yourself. You can find a theme that's really well suited to running a business like this. But that's essentially the process for setting it up. In terms of a funnel, if you want to do email opt-ins, you can use landing pages plugins, or you can use opt-in plugins like opt-in skin or something like that to get email addresses. Mostly for 7-day startup businesses, I'd recommend just having a buy now button. Have a really nice landing page, put some testimonials on it, put some really strong copy, a strong headline, and a buy now button using PayPal or Stripe, and you're pretty much in business. So that's more or less it. If there's any questions, just ask them in the community. I believe this is something you can do in one day, and using WordPress, it means you can build something that will last you for years and scale till you're a multi-million-dollar company. That there's huge companies using WordPress for their site and for their blog. So this is a great platform for you to use. Right, so that's the process. I mean, register a domain, set up hosting, set up WordPress, install your theme, configure WordPress, and then set up some kind of funnel that enables your visitors to become customers. I hope this has been useful. I think it's a pretty good skill to have, to be able to set up a website by yourself, and I've certainly set up a lot of websites in my time. I think WordPress is an awesome platform, and I hope you use it for your startup. I hope this has been... So thank you. I'll see you guys in the next module.